So the beginning of the parsha is Ramban describes the Shekel HaKodesh. Perek Lamed Pasuk Yud Gimel. The Ramban says, let's just find it. There we go. Yeah, the question he wants to understand is, what is the significance of being called Shekel HaKodesh? What does that mean? Kavalo Moshe Rabbeinu, Pasuk Yud Gimel, Matbea Kesef Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu fixes the coin of the Bnei Yisrael, because he was a great king. The Karla Matbea hu Shekel. He calls that coin a shekel, because the whole coin is a complete shekel, right? It's got no, it's not less than that, and there's no dross in it. It's complete pure kesef. Because all the coins of the erechin, that means the valuations that are given to the Beis Hamikdash, the redemption of a bechar, and they use that coin, and they are kodesh. That means the things you use it for are holy. Similarly, all the shkolim of the Mishkan. Every fixed amount of kesef in the Torah is using this measurement. Therefore, yikra kosev shekel hakodesh. And that is why it's called shekel hakodesh. So the holy shekel is not that the coin has an intrinsic kedusha. It means that it is used for holy things. And because it's used for holy purposes, it achieves the name Shekel HaKodesh, right? Now, you'd ask me, okay, well, all right, what is the practical nafkamina? What is the difference? What does that mean? Ramban does something fascinating. He uses this to help us understand why we call Loshan HaKodesh, right? He uses the Shekel HaKodesh to explain Loshan HaKodesh. With this, I can understand why Chazal call the Lashon of the Torah Lashon HaKodesh. Because all the Divrei Torah and the Nevi'im and all words of holiness, they're all said in that tongue. This is the tongue with which Hashem speaks to his Nevi'im and to his people. The words of the Aseret, and with it he is called with his holy names, Kel, Elokim, Tzvakos, Shakai, Yud-Kei, all the names of Hashem. Hashem HaGodol HaMiyuchad, the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, right? I believe that's what it means. Well, the name means the great name of Bai Bara Eloma, with which Hashem created the world. Maybe it's the name we're not aware of. Maybe it means the 72-letter name of Toras, Shemos, Shemai Ba'aretz, Echol HaShabom. When he called the names of the heavens and everything else, using this phrase, using this tongue. They're all called with the name, and it's all in Lashon HaKodesh. It's all in Lashon HaKodesh. It's all using the same Lashon HaKodesh. Michal, Gabriel, Lashon HaKodesh, Shemus, Kedoshim, Shavuot, Abraham, Yaakov, Shalom, Zolosim. The names of the Avos are also using the same phrase. So the idea is, he goes on to interestingly discuss how the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim understands that it's called Lashon HaKodesh simply because you will not find in Lashon HaKodesh any words that are derogatory or used for things that are if you like, sort of debase or whatever. The words don't exist in Lashon HaKodesh. Therefore, for the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, that's why it's called Lashon HaKodesh, because it's literally the holy tongue. Because there are words that don't exist in Lashon HaKodesh, and you have to find replacement words that are words. The words that are used for certain things in Lashon HaKodesh are words that are almost like replacement words. There's no actual word, right? And this, he says, is why it's called Lashon HaKodesh. But the Ramban disagrees with that, and the Ramban understands that the Lashon is kedusha, has kedusha because it is used for something which is kodesh, which is holy. And I think that the idea here, and that's the comparison to the Shekel HaKodesh, right? The Shekel HaKodesh is called the Shekel HaKodesh because it's used for holy purposes, and the tongue, the Lashon of the Torah, is called the holy tongue because it's used for holy purposes, for kedusha. And I think that the message that we see from this Ramban is a very powerful one, because the thing can be in an animate object or can be intrinsically lack kedusha. It doesn't have any intrinsic holiness. But when you transform something and you use it for a purpose which is kadosh, the thing itself is elevated, right? And that's our speech, and that's what we use our finances for. Everything else, the whole thing is elevated. That's the message the Ramban is saying. Right, now we're going to focus on what the Ramban says in Egel HaZohov, quite a bit later in the parasha, but obviously the main focus of the parasha. The Ramban gives us a mahalach. He gives us a pathway towards understanding what exactly was going on with the Egel HaZohov, It's on Pasuk Aleph, the first Pasuk in Perek Lamed Beis. Vayar ha'om ki v'shesh Moshe l'oredis min ha'har. The people saw Moshe delay coming down from the mountain. Vayikohel ha'om al Aharon vayomer. They said to him, Kum asilonu Elohim asher elchu lefonenu, that will go in front of us. Literally translated as a god that will go in front of us. Ki zeh Moshe ha'oish asher elonu mi'eretz Mitzrayim. The Moshe, the man whom took us out from Eretz Mitzrayim, le'odanu, we do not know what has happened to him. If you think that's a long pasuk, it's because it is. It's one of the longest, if not the longest in the Torah, I think. I think so. The longest pasuk in Tanakh is in Megillah Esther. But I believe this is not, if not the longest, it's one of the very longest pasukim in the whole Torah, this pasuk. And it's a description of what exactly transpired. Now, the Ramban tells us like this. He quotes Rashi. They requested or they desired many different forms of deities. This Moshe who took us up from Mitzrayim, who was showing us the way, we don't know what's happened to him. And that's why now we need all of these guides, all of these gods, literally, right, to show us the way. That's Rashi. Okay, so if you look at the simple explanation of Rashi, it seems to be that they're asking for a deity. That's what he says. We don't have Moshe Rabbeinu to lead us, and therefore we need all these other deities to lead us. His lashon of Rashi says is difficult to understand. He might mean that it doesn't match up exactly with the pasuk and the psukim, the words in the Torah. We're going to see how the Ramban understands it. He says this pasuk hu mafteach. It is a key. This pasuk is the key. Lodas nochoin inyan ha'egel. If you want to understand the concept of the golden calf, right, and the direction of travel of the thought of those who created it, what their intent and their purpose was, you need to understand this pasuk very carefully. He says, Ki biyodua, it is known. It's known that Moshe, they didn't think Moshe Rabbeinu was a god. That was not on the cards, he says. You can see that from the whole Torah. It didn't cross their minds that he himself had performed all these signs and wonders, right? Now that since Moshe has gone from us, now we should make a god. Doesn't make sense. The whole way through, they haven't treated him in that way. They've always understood he's a leader. They've asked him to go and represent their claims to or their issues that they have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But they never saw him as a god, right? And the whole Haggadah, right, is the whole emphasis, so much of the focus, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvodav atzmai. This is it, right? And the whole, it's all there. That's their experience. What are we saying in Haggadah? We're saying we're describing the experience of the Bnei Yisrael, that they experienced, and they knew that. So what is going on here? V'od, he says, secondly, Ki beferish amru Elohim asher elchu lefonenu. The God who will go before us, or the word Elohim. They weren't looking for a quote unquote a replacement deity to give them life in this world or life in the world to come. They were looking for a guide, someone who will go in front of us, before us. They were looking, he says, for another Moshe. That's what they wanted. Omru, they said, Moshe lonu haderech. Moshe who showed us the way, from Mitzrayim until now. Shoyam asim al pi Hashem biyad Moshe. The journey was always al pi Hashem biyad Moshe. He carried it out through the hand of Moshe, right? Hine obad menu. He's gone. He's lost from us. Nasilon Moshe acher. We need to make another Moshe. They said, Sheyora aderech lefoninu al pi Hashem biyodoi, who will show us the way in front of us through Hashem with His hand. That's what we want. That's what they said. V'zeh tam is kiro Moshe ho'ish asher ha'elonu. That's why they say Moshe ho'ish, Moshe the man who took us out, lo ho'el asher ha'elon, not the God. They didn't call him a God who took them out. Kidstarchu le'ish Leish Elokim, that they need a man of God. That wasn't the idea, right? It says Moshe HaIsh. The emphasis is on the Ish. If it was true that they wanted to replace with a deity, why are they going back to the fact that Moshe was a man? Because the idea is they want someone who is a man. It could be means they need a man of God, but they need a man. That's the idea, a leader. He says, you can understand this, he says, Mitshuvas Aaron el Moshe Rabbeinu, from the response of Aaron to Moshe Rabbeinu. Aaron says to Moshe Rabbeinu, what has this people done to you? You have brought upon it a great sin. Right? How could you do this? He asks Aaron. How could you create this Egel Azov, this golden calf? So what's Aaron's answer? Aaron's answer is, they said to me, let's go and make a god. And he said to them, he describes what he did. Who's got gold? His paroku vayitnuli. Divest yourselves of your gold and bring that to me. I'll throw into the fire. Aaron excuses himself to Moshe. Mitnatzel, modern Hebrew is to excuse himself, right? So he said, don't become angry with me. But what's going on? He's saying, don't become angry with me. And then he describes what he's done. And he's taken the gold. And he's made a golden calf. It's like he's adding on more sin to his crime. They asked me to make an avodah zarah, and I made it with my own hands. That's what he's describing. Why should Moshe not become angry? What greater sin is there than this? You understand? Moshe Rabbeinu is going out to him and saying, what's going on? How could this happen? How could you bring this sin on the people? And he says, don't become angry. I'll tell you what happened. What happened was, they asked me to make a golden calf, and I asked them for the gold, and I did it. Please don't become angry. You understand? If he's making an idol, then what on earth is he saying? He's like describing the crime in detail and saying, please don't become angry, right? He says, the matter is, as I said, they didn't request the golden calf, right, as a god, a deity to give death or life. The kiblu avodas elokusa aleim. They accepted the service of Hashem. But they wanted it to be in the place of Moshe to show them the way. This was Aaron's excuse. This Ramban is very important because you all heard this before. This concept that they weren't really trying to replace Hashem, they were trying to replace Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm assuming you've heard this idea before, or the essence of it, but it's good to see it inside. The Ramban is the one who sets it out. Maybe others as well. Rashi doesn't say this. It's the Ramban, right? This was the excuse of Aaron. He claimed, right? Hashem. They didn't say to me, they only asked me, I should make for them a god that would go in front of them, or a leader really it means, in place of you, my master. Right? They didn't know what happened to you. They didn't know if you're coming back or not. Therefore, they needed someone to show them the way, as long as you wouldn't be with them. And if you will return, they will forsake this new leader. They'll follow you as they did originally. And thus it was. Once the people saw Moshe, they left the golden calf. They rejected it. They let him burn it. And scatter its ashes on the face of the water. And no one argued. He says, think about what's happening. Moshe Rabbeinu comes on, and they grind it up, and they destroy this calf, and they scatter on water. If they thought it was their God, their new God, why did they allow him to do that? And the answer is because they only wanted it as a replacement of Moshe Rabbeinu, and they didn't need it. You see, he didn't rebuke them, and he didn't say anything to them. But when he came into the camp, right? In other words, he hadn't said anything, and he came into the camp, and he saw the calf and the dancing. Miyad baruch and he ran away. He took the calf, and he gave him to drink. They didn't object. If they was meant to make a god, People don't leave their gods to be burnt in fire. They're going to allow him to burn their god in their fire, not stone him. There's huge numbers of them. He's only one or two. He's only one person. Why are they going to let him do this? And the answer is because they didn't need any more. And they realized they didn't need any more. So it all makes sense now. Moshe Rabbeinu, they understood, they wanted to replace Moshe Rabbeinu. Aaron understood that, and that's his explanation. Because we don't know what happened to you, right? And Aaron, that's what they say. That's what they say to him. When Aaron himself goes afterwards to explain and excuse his actions, what he's trying to say is they just wanted to replace you, and that's what I did. That's what I followed, right? And therefore, that's also why they don't object when the calf is destroyed, because they don't need it anymore, and they've realized that they made this was their fundamental error.
There's two things. They worshipped it.
Yes. Well, what does that mean exactly? What does that mean?
All that.
If we're explaining Eile Elohecha Yisrael, those words, is what it says. This is your God. It doesn't mean a God. It means the one who led you out of Mitzrayim. Right? That's what it means. Okay, that's what it means. And that was the celebrations, etc., right? Right. So, I mean, there are obviously many more questions that need resolving. I mean, there are Ramban,
for example.
Yeah. Well, he rejected them.
Exactly.
No, but he stood up against them. There was the mob effectively. Yeah.
His opinion and said that's why Aaron actually.
Rashi brings that. So Rashi says that Aaron saw. What did he see? He saw many things. He saw that Hur had been killed, and he saw he would use the delaying tactic, etc., etc. He did all these things. That's what Aaron observed. I mean, there's obviously a lot many more pieces to this. The Ramban in the next piece, which is quite esoteric, the next paragraph, he goes on to try and understand what was it, why did Aaron produce this calf? I mean, there are other explanations of that, as I'll say, it came up of itself and whatever, I think, and it was the, what was the, pun?
Piece of paper.
Yeah. Right, exactly. But he goes into a very sort of deep idea based on Kabbalah, it seems, that there's this concept of destruction coming from the north. We see that elsewhere. Or Midas Hadin comes from the smoil from the left, and how exactly that fits with the north. I think because maybe the smoil is associated with the north, left and the north have a connection. I think if you think the east being forwards, west backwards, so the left is the north. I think so, right? And basically, he says in the Merkava, the Maisa Merkava, Yechezkel's vision of the chariot, you see that the Pnei Shor is on the left. There are different animals represented on the Merkava, and the Shor is on the left. So he basically says Aaron thought that this would kind of, I think he seems to be saying that this would incur having having the ox, which incurs that Midas Hadin, would itself incur the Midas Hadin, it seems, to the strict attribute of judgment, to kind of lead them away from what they were doing, something along those lines. That would itself be a way of it being stopped in its tracks, right? I think that's what he's saying, but it's as I say, it's quite a deep. He seems to be referring to these ideas of Kabbalah, but that's basically what he goes into. So anyway, but that's the basic idea of the Ramban. Let us go now to Perek Lamed Beis, Pasuk Tes Zayin and Yud Ches. So yeah, Tes Zayin. Just a few short ideas here. Tes Zayin, first Tes Zayin, yeah. So the Ramban says, the Ramban says, what does it mean? V'haluchos. Why is it that when Moshe Rabbeinu, it says Vayifen Vayir Moshe min Har, so Moshe come down the mountain, snei luchos ha'idus in his hands. The luchos ksum shnei avrem. Why is the description of the luchos given here? That's the Ramban's question, right? It's you would expect that the luchos would be described in detail, like in Yisra and Mishpatim. It's a fascinating thing. Moshe Rabbeinu descends the mountain, and he's carrying the two luchos. It should say then he broke them. He sees the egel and he breaks them, right? Why here? Why does the Torah wait to this point to describe them in detail? This is the first time the Torah has done that. The Torah says the two tablets were in his hand, and these two tablets were ksuvim mishnei Evrahim, were written on both sides, and you could read them both ways. Mizeh mizehim ksuvim v'haluchos ma'aseh Elokim heima, and the luchos were the work of God. V'amichtav michtav Elokim hu, Choros ala luchos, and it was Hashem's own writing engraved on the luchos. Why are we telling? Why is that all being explained now? Says Ramban Al HaTorah, Kosul Kol Ma'aser Luchos V'Posel V'Yitein El Moshe. Should have said it earlier. That posuk he gave, when it says he gave to Moshe Rabbeinu, that's where it should have said the description of the luchos. Because there it says written with the finger of God. So why doesn't it say all this description there as well? You know why it says it here? To describe the lofty state of the luchos. That even though they were so holy, he did not refrain from breaking them. Because he was filled with wrath when he saw this evil action. And he couldn't hold himself back. Or as Chazal explained, that the writing itself fled when he came to the border of the Egel. He came to the place of Tumah and the sin, and the writing fled. And that's why the writing has two explanations. Number one, that it's saying it to the lofty status of Moshe Rabbeinu, that even though he knew what he was carrying and he knew how holy it was, and the luchos and was written with Hashem, even so, he did what he had to do, and that's why he broke the luchos. And we know at the end of the Torah, the last pasuk, right? Le'inei Chol Yisrael, yeah, it says Asher Shibarto, Yasher Kercha Asher Shibarto. Hashem gives that stamp of approval to his actions, etc., right? Or the idea being that the writing is emphasized here because it actually left at this point, and that's why it's emphasized. Then he says that Moshe, this is a very cryptic pasuk to understand, pasuk Yudches. He says, "Ein kol anus gevura ve'ein kol anus chalusha, kol anus anochi shomea." So Rashi explains the pasuk meaning like this: what is the sound? Yeshua hears the sound of the people, and he says there's a sound of battle. Moshe Rabbeinu responds, "This is not a sound of strength. It's not a sound of weakness, but it's a sound of blasphemy." Kol anus is like inui, affliction. It's an afflicting sound. Okay. The person who hears them feels afflicted. That's what kol anus means, an inui, like Yom Kippurim, right? Right? Says the Ramban, it's not because of his knowledge of the matter. It says it was a sound of affliction. He recognized the different types of sounds. It was a kol or sound. It seems affliction, assuming he's explaining the same thing the same as Rashi. The Chacham Bahagodi brings the Medrash Rabbah in Koheles. Amar Moshe Misha Austin and Hoek Stral Yisrael Einu Mavchim Den Koil Koil. Doesn't understand a distinction between one sound and another sound. In emotional Amvasonusa Gadola, I think that's a response to Yehoshua. This is the key line I wanted to bring out. Moshe Rabbeinu's great humility. He didn't tell Yehoshua about the matter. He didn't want to speak about the negativity of what Yisrael had done. He just said to him that it is a sound of schok, of laughter, of levity. So it's very interesting. The Ramban seems to be understanding, right, that, and I think this is what it means by koil. It seems like that's how he's understanding what it means by koil anus, a sound which afflicts the listener. You see, I mean, Ibn Ezra I can see says like it means like singing, right? That's how niginos, that he understands anos like niginos, like a nigun. Yeah, somehow he sees that in the word anos. So it could be the Ramban is learning the same thing, and that's why I think he says that Moshe Rabbeinu recognizes the different nigune hakolos, the way people change their voice based on singing or whatever, right? And that's what he said he could hear. Okay, the message that Moshe Rabbeinu seems that the Ramban is trying to convey to us is that Moshe Rabbeinu himself could see and understand how bad it was, right? But he didn't want to convey that. He wanted to restrict and limit what he had to say about the actions of the Klal Yisrael. It's a theme the whole way through. You see that he's trying to at least restrict, and afterwards, of course, he's going to defend them. So even in this small interchange between him and Yehoshua, he restricts what he needs to say. And therefore, he just says, Kel schok, it's I can hear like levity going on. He doesn't want to go into detail of how bad it is, even though he understands what's going on. And finally, one other short Ramban Perek Lamed Daled Posuk Gimel. Much later on, when we have the Yud Gimel Midas Shel Rachamim, right? Perek Lamed Daled Posuk Gimel. It says Ve'ishlo Yale Emoch. What happens with the second luchos that's different to the first? So it says, he says you're going to go up in the morning to Har Sinai. V'nitzavto li sham al rosh ha'har. You will stand for me there. Hashem says on the top of the mountain. Ve'ishlo Yale Emoch. No one's coming with you. Ali V'gamish Ali Rabba. No one shall appear on the mountain. The tzon and the bokar, they don't graze in the mountain. It's all right. It's just you come. Ramban says the elders of Israel are not going up, just like with the first luchos. At the base of the mountain as well, they're not going to stand where they originally stood. The goat, the cattle, and the sheep, they can't graze towards the mountain. Mineged. Now, what's the difference? Right? If you look at one of Parshas Yisro, what does it say? Right? No animal or person can touch the mountain. That original warning, that instruction, still stood. The presence of Hashem was on the mountain constantly until the second luchos were given. So that restriction of touching the mountain had not been relaxed at this point. It was still there. But now, he was stricter than the first time, right? That now they can't even graze facing the mountain. Why? The reason of this is as follows. What was going on the first time? Ma'amat Har Sinai. Revelation that's saying as Har Sinai was for all of Klal Yisrael. It was, and in their zchus almost, their merit, the whole thing, right? But this time, Moshe Rabbeinu had, so to speak, achieved this through his own zchus and through his tefillah. We know he had 40 days of tefillah and he davened for them, and that's why Hashem forgave them, etc., right? And therefore, the honor, the glory, and the greatness that is revealed on the mountain, right? The second time is greater than the first time. Now that's a beautiful idea. You understand what the Ramban is saying? You understand? First time, there's all of the Klal Yisrael, and it's the zchus of the whole Jewish people, and they're all there, and it's an amazing thing. It's a revelation. It's unbelievable. The second time, it's one person who has managed to invest so much through their own efforts, their own zchus, their own tefillah, and the result is greater. The result, that means the cover, the revelation is greater. The corresponding revelation at Har Sinai is greater because it came through that effort and that immense self-sacrifice. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, "Mecheni no misifrecha," right? There's a Sforno. The Sforno says, "Mecheni no misifrecha." What does he mean? He means that whatever you're going to decide to do, basically words like this, give my zchusim, he says to them. Like, let whatever I've achieved go to them to save them. That's what it means. That amazing Sforno. That's what it means. Mecheni no, wipe me out from your book, right? Take away everything that I have, add it to their credit, and let's see if that saves them. So that's Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And they're covered, and the glory of the revelation of the second luchos as a result of that is greater than the first. That is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful month. Okay, have a wonderful Shabbos. Okay.